Welcome to the STAR Method micro course. If you struggle with using STAR methods during interviews, then this video is for you. In this video, we'll go over what the STAR method is, how it's used, and I'll give you strong example answers to real interview questions. Also, check the caption box for free interview resources to help you pass your interview. Let's get right to it. If you don't already know, STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. It's used to answer behavioral interview questions, including other types of interview questions, but we'll talk about the other types of interview questions later. Back to STAR method. Situation, meaning what was the story or the context? For example, task, meaning what did you have to do? What was the goal? For example, I had to deliver 2 reports on the same day. Action, this is about you. What did you do? What action did you take? For example, I created a project schedule, or I created a detailed spreadsheet. And finally, results. What was the outcome? What was the benefit of your work? And can you quantify your results? You should always try and quantify your results as often as possible. For example, this resulted in a 20% increase in web traffic, or we were able to complete the project 2 days ahead of schedule. By the way, I'm Amie, a former recruiter who spent thousands of hours interviewing professionals from the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. If you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe for more interview training videos. As I've already said, the STAR method is used to answer behavioral interview questions, but you could also use it to answer other types of interview questions. These include situational interview questions and competency-based interview questions. So what's the difference between these 3 types of interview questions? In the behavioral interview, the interviewer is assessing your behavior and way of thinking based on past experiences. An example of a behavioral interview question is, tell me about a time you worked with a difficult person. In the situational interview, the interviewer is assessing your thought processes and behaviors based on future or hypothetical scenarios. An example of a situational interview question is, if you were given a project with a tight deadline, how would you ensure that you submit the project on time? The best part about the situational interview question is that you're already given the situational part of the STAR method. Here's an example. You're writing a complex budget at work, but the final budget is incorrect. How would you identify the mistake and fix the final budget? So as you can see in this question, you already have the situation. You just need to complete the task, action, result part of the method. So as you can see, situational interview questions are very similar to behavioral interview questions, except that behavioral interviews focus on past behaviors and actions, while situational interviews focus on future or hypothetical scenarios and actions. It's the difference between, tell me about a time you worked with a difficult colleague with a negative attitude, which is a behavioral interview question, and imagine you're working with a difficult colleague with a negative attitude. What would you do to ensure team morale and good communication? This is a situational interview question. See the difference? For competency-based interview questions, the interviewer is assessing specific competencies that you use to do your job. This includes competencies like communication, teamwork, leadership, problem-solving, initiative, and many more. An example of a competency-based interview question is, describe a situation where you had to use good communication to handle a difficult customer. As you can see, the competency being assessed here is communication. These type of interview questions start off with, tell me about a time when. Describe a situation where, or give me an example of. Large companies, government jobs, graduate schemes still use this style of interviewing to assess a candidate's potential and not just their experience. So now we're going to move on to real example answers to behavioral, situational, and competency-based interview questions. I've got 6 example answers for you for both entry-level and experienced job hunters. Here's an example of using the STAR method to answer the behavioral interview question. Describe a time you were overwhelmed and how you handled it. Describe a time you were overwhelmed and how you handled it. In my last role, I was part of the technology transfer team for a transition project after my company acquired a smaller competitor. This was a major project, and I was responsible for project tracking, internal communications, and change management. Towards the end of the project, the workload became overwhelming, especially with the multiple late nights. So I used the prioritization metrics to ensure I focused on the most essential deliverables. I asked for support where possible, and this included taking short periods of time off to recharge as needed and also delegating tasks to others where possible. In the end, I was able to complete my work to meet the project deadline, and the experience reinforced the importance of robust scope management to avoid overwhelm and burnout. Describe a time you were overwhelmed and how you handled it. During my internship at a marketing agency, I had to support the launch of a new brand. The project involved creating marketing content for social media to establish brand presence. As a recent graduate, this was a lot of responsibility and I was overwhelmed, as you can imagine. I had to develop content that wasn't only engaging and creative, but also aligned with clients' brand identity. I knew I had to prioritize my workload to avoid being overwhelmed. I started by creating a content calendar to ensure timely deliverable of materials. I ensured that the content met both the client's expectations and industry guidelines. I scheduled regular check-ins with my manager to obtain constructive feedback and content approval. My content exceeded expectations in terms of creativity and engagement. In the first 3 months, the brand's Instagram grew from 0 to 10K followers with a 7% engagement rate. Quick tip. You can create a bank of STAR method answers to common interview questions to help you prepare for interview. You don't need 10 or 20 stories, just 4 to 6 stories that are concise and impactful. Next is an example of using the STAR method to answer the situational interview question. Tell me how you would handle making a mistake at work. As this is a hypothetical/future scenario, you have to adapt your language slightly to answer this question using the STAR method. Here's an example. Tell me how you would handle making a mistake at work. Well, if I was to make a mistake at work, there are 2 key things I would do. First, I take ownership of the mistake. That's really important. Second, I'd act fast to rectify the mistake, asking for support where needed, with a goal to minimize the negative impact of the mistake. I can give you an example from early in my career where I learned the importance of being detail-orientated. I sent an email with a payment request to the wrong client. This was because the client contacts had identical names even though they worked at different companies. This was a potential breach of client's confidentiality. I had to follow company procedures to deal with the breach of confidentiality and also manage the client interaction. As soon as I realized my mistake, I quickly recalled the email and informed my manager and the legal team, who then assessed the situation. I also had to acknowledge and apologize for the mistake to the client. Luckily, the email I sent did not disclose full project details. The breach was logged, but it was classified as a minor and the issue was resolved. Going forward, I always take the time to triple check my emails and messages when interacting with clients. So overall, taking ownership, having clear communication, and taking quick action are key for dealing with mistakes. Tell me how you would handle making a mistake at work. How would I handle making a mistake at work? Well, I can actually give you a real example. During my time volunteering as a cashier at the charity shop, I made a mistake whilst processing a customer's purchase. It was a busy day and I entered the wrong price for the item, resulting in an overcharge. I had to void the sale, then double check the price, and then process the correct amount. As soon as I realized the mistake, I calmly apologized to the customer for the error. I called for a supervisor to void the transaction, and whilst waiting for assistance, I had a friendly chat with the customer to ease any potential discomfort. Once the supervisor arrived, we corrected the transaction, and I double-checked to ensure that the customer was satisfied with the resolution. The customer appreciated the quick resolution and my honest acknowledgement of the mistake. From this experience, I learned that the best way to deal with mistakes at work is to have clear communication with my supervisor and to take quick action to fix the mistake. Quick tips. Practicing your STAR method answers for interview preparation is important. However, you need to be careful not to sound too rehearsed or robotic. You need to be genuine, confident, and you need to let your personality shine through. Here's 3 examples of how to do this. Number 1 is to know your answers off by heart. Be so familiar with your stories that you can discuss these stories without looking at your notes, and you can talk about these stories in different ways. Number 2, when writing down your stories, write your stories in bullet points rather than paragraphs, because this helps you to remember the structure better. Number 3, take time to pause and think. You can even use filler words like or get the gist. This makes you sound more real and less robotic. Now, here's an example of how to use the STAR method to answer the competency-based interview question. Can you give me an example of a successful team project you were involved in? The competency being assessed here is teamwork. Can you give an example of a successful team project you were involved in? Well, in my last role, I was part of the contracts team where we manage contracts for medical equipment. Due to an update in data privacy regulations, our department had to revise our contract templates to comply with the new regulation by a set deadline. I had to lead the revision of the data privacy clauses in our contract templates. It involved collaborating with multiple teams to ensure the new language was legal and commercially viable. First, I collaborated with the legal department to draft new contractual language. I then worked with the sales and marketing team to ensure that the updated clauses wouldn't delay our ability to close deals. Finally, I worked with the product management team to make sure that our internal processes and products could support the new contractual obligations. By coordinating with cross-functional teams, we were able to successfully update all template contracts well ahead of the regulatory deadline. The new templates enhanced our company's compliance and operational efficiency. Can you give an example of a successful team project you were involved in? At university, we had a final year project for our business management course. As a team, we had to analyze a real business case and develop a winning strategy to address the challenges being faced by the company. Each team member was assigned a responsibility. I took lead on the financial analysis aspect of the project. I examined the company's financial statements and identified areas for improvement. I organized and led regular meetings to ensure effective communication within the team. The result of our collaboration was an actionable business plan covering operational efficiencies and innovative marketing and financial strategies. And for our final presentation, we received very positive feedback from our professors for our creativity. Quick tips. As an entry-level job seeker, you might think you don't have enough experiences to give examples in an interview. However, you have so many different life experiences that you can draw from. Here are some ideas. University, of course. Was there a group project where a classmate didn't pull their weight? Voluntary work. Maybe you volunteered at a charity office where you developed your time management and organization skills. Maybe you did an internship where you learned to apply theory to practice. Travel. Maybe you can talk about your travel experiences where you learned resilience and how to stay calm under pressure. Personal projects. Did you do a fitness challenge? Or maybe you wrote a blog or developed a website. Did you develop an original idea using your initiative? More tips. A really good quality to display in an interview is positivity. Always be positive during your interview. Positivity helps you display enthusiasm for the role. It also encourages a solutions-oriented mindset. Here are some phrases to give you an idea of how I would display positivity in an interview. I see challenges as a chance to learn and improve. I'm excited about the opportunity to add value. That experience made me better at. See what I mean? It's about framing your experience in a positive light, no matter what that experience is. STAR method can add structure to any story. Here's an example of using STAR method in everyday life. Here's an example for getting a refund at a store. Situation. I bought a new blender, but when I got home, I saw that it was broken. Task. I had to return the blender and get a full refund. Action. I found my receipt and the original packaging. I went to the store and calmly explained the issue to the customer service. Result. The customer advisor processed my return without any hassle, and I received a full refund. Now here's a challenge to help you prepare for interview. Write your own bank of 6 STAR method stories for these common interview questions. 1. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult client or coworker. 2. Describe a time you failed or made a mistake at work. 3. You're given a task to complete that you have never done before, and your manager is out of the office for the day. How do you approach the situation? 4. Give me an example of a time you had to work on a tight deadline. 5. You notice a major error in a report you're about to send to a client, or your team lead reviewed and approved this report. How do you handle this? 6. Describe a situation where you had to explain a complex topic to a non-technical audience. What was your approach and what was the result? Now practice your answers out loud, either by recording yourself or practicing with a friend. The goal is to be confident, to sound natural, and to practice being concise.